Good afternoon. So, you see the title of the talk, right? Advanced Agile Software Engineering. Okay. So by advanced, I mean more powerful than, say, Scrum alone as a framework. I would even say more powerful than any other Agile framework. But maybe I don't know all the frameworks. If you think you know a more powerful framework, tell me please. But I don't know, and I've never met anybody who claims to know. So I think it's more powerful. In fact, I have a paper where I talk about superpowers. When you can make things happen 10 times faster, that's a Harry Potter superpower. That's how powerful, that's how advanced it is, okay? But you can judge. Don't believe me because I say it, right? I'm sort of selling you my ideas. But you judge yourself, is it more advanced, okay? Definitely agile. I gave you my definition of agile this morning, but basically ability to respond to change so that we can deliver value. Software. Well, I could have put the word IT, information technology, software, but I could have also put the word systems. I believe that software people have to be systems people. That means they have to think about people, culture, relationships, hardware, internet, database. Oh yes, and some computer programs. I almost forgot. You get my point? You have to worry about the whole thing or it won't work. You can't deliver the value. Okay? So as soon as we can, we need to get out of this coding business and get into the systems business to deliver value. Otherwise, we will continue to fail. Remember I told you? 61% total failure for Agile. Why? Because we don't do the systems, we don't listen to the stakeholders, we don't clearly articulate our ideas for requirements and design, these kinds of problems. Engineering. Well, we have some definitions coming up there, but in simple terms, when you're using lots of tables and tables and numbers and systematic logic, I call that engineering. Okay? When you're waving your arms and say we should have a stand-up meeting with some yellow stickies and it's good stuff, that's not engineering. I call that poetry. Nothing wrong with poetry. I love poetry. But poetry won't improve the failure rate of Agile projects. And there's too much poetry. Too much nice-sounding words all over the place. Too little data. Okay? I believe in what we call evidence-driven decision-making. Look it up. It's a big hot topic in management. Evidence-driven. Because that's what scientists do. That's what engineers do. That's what good managers do. They get driven by the facts, the measures, and the evidence, not just feelings and culture. Feelings are good, but you need to confirm your feeling with some data. Okay? Culture is good, but you have to check that the culture works. And if it's failing 61% of the time, it's not working. So Agile, as we know it today, is not working. That's generally acknowledged. We can quibble whether the failure rate, total failure rate is 40% or 61%. But it's really bad. Really embarrassing to be a part of this culture. I'm trying to change it. Maybe you will try to change it. At least you will not fail so often. That would be a good start. Start changing the world with you, your project. You can. You don't have to wait around. Okay, now, the next sentence, adding capability to a basic Agile framework. Let's say you're doing Scrum, and let's say you're culturally embedded in Scrum. Everybody's trained, you've been doing it, okay, it isn't working so well, but we are Scrum people. Okay, well, what is Scrum? It's a framework, right? And you know you can and should add things to the framework, right? For example, all the testing isn't in Scrum. You have to figure out how you're going to do it from other places. Take a simple example. So all of these things I'm speaking about can be added to the Scrum framework. Got it? So you don't have to change Scrum to do this. You can add to the Scrum framework. That's politically nice. Don't have to fight the people who love and believe in the religion called Scrum. You don't have to have any Scrum, because I've got a similar identical framework called Evo, which does exactly the same thing. Okay, so you can go straight to that and avoid Scrum. Or maybe you feel we should politically get rid of Scrum. It's got a bad reputation. Let's start with something else. It's a possibility. But the important thing is you can add any of these ideas. Jeff Sutherland, who co-invented Scrum, is extremely clear in writing about it. Actually, there were some quotations in the morning lecture that these are the most advanced things he has ever seen done in the Scrum community. And he has wanted to add it to the Scrum framework even, but he decided, he pulled back and said, no, let's keep the framework simple. No matter how good ideas from the outside, let's keep Scrum simple. Okay? And that's his decision. But it is approved by Jeff Sutherland in writing, in case you feel you need permission from the Pope to do anything, in case you cannot think for yourself. These are simply a list of the options, and right now that's just a lot of text. It's late, tired, me too. I was up until 1 o'clock tuning the lectures and figuring out when my son would arrive from India and a few other things like that. So, but if you want a summary of what we're going to do, it's that. Okay, maybe we can look at it later. Those are, if you like, the basic tools or ideas. Well, Agile, as it is taught and practiced today, is largely for programmers and coders about programming and coding. There are some exceptions, okay? Probably you know about some of the exceptions, but it's very, very code-focused. The Agile Manifesto was written by programmers who love programming and say so. Kent Beck, very good example. He loves programming still. He hates all that Agile stuff. Doesn't want to go near it. Okay? But he loves his programming. Nothing wrong with loving programming and doing it well. Okay, world needs good programmers, but I don't think the world should be run by programmers. And unfortunately, that's what's happening in IT and software. Programmers have a framework that says the primary purpose is to deliver working software. It doesn't say deliver value or results. It just says deliver working software. That's ridiculous. That's embarrassing that anybody could buy into such an oversimplification of the wrong thing. Just, try ask a top manager. Do you want us to deliver software even if we deliver no improvement to the business? Or do you want us to deliver high value for the business quickly even if we don't deliver any software? Ask any top manager. The people are paying you. What do you think they're going to answer? I want software. I've heard that's very modern. We should have some of that. To hell with business results. Let them fire me if they don't like the way I'm running. I want software, software, software. Please program. Don't worry about value and results and quality. Huh? Crazy world we live in. Huh? Here is our cycle we briefly introduced. So this cycle is essentially a Deming-Short statistical process control plan, do, study, act cycle. Look it up. Look up Deming. Look up plan, do, study, act. Okay, but a little bit enlarged for our purposes here. Okay. There's the key idea that is not in Scrum. After you deliver, where you're trying to get more security, for example, you measure how much security you got more. Not how much code you delivered. Not how many user stories or use cases that got coded. Not how many epics. That's silly. If your purpose is to get quality, like security or usability, you need to measure the security or usability itself. And if you don't know how to do that, you'd better learn. If you don't know how to do it, Google it. There are only about 1 million hits when you put something like IT security metrics. Try it. IT usability metrics. Lots of people know how to do it. It's so simple you can Google many good answers. So don't, if you can't do it, it just means you're ignorant. You have something to learn. So learn it. But do decide we do have to measure it. And if I don't know how to do it, then I have to learn to be a good professional in this business. I can't just say, I don't know how to do it, therefore we will never do it, therefore we'll focus on the coding even if security goes down. Think of Mark Zuckerberg has a little privacy problem. He's a coder, he's a programmer. He didn't think that was important. Sorry. He may grow up, this programmer. But he's, some of you get to a really large scale before you woke up and said, it's not about programming. Programming is a necessity. Bricklaying is a necessity to build large buildings. But it's not architecture. It's not engineering. And you wouldn't want a 200-story skyscraper built only by bricklayers deciding everything. But that's what we do with IT systems. Okay, so first subject is this quantification of, and I realize the text is a bit small here, we have larger ones, but this is just a whole lot of ilities, a lot of security here, and a lot of usability here, okay? These are examples of what I mean when I say values and qualities. When you ask people, why are you doing this project? They will give you a list of their values and qualities. I need more security. I need more user-friendliness. I need to reduce the cost. That's what we call the values of the stakeholders. And you need to name them. You need to decide what is most critical in the short term. I call this the top 10 for the coming year or two. You can do the other ones later. But why don't we have a prioritization which says, do the most important stuff early? That, in fact, is already built into Agile in different ways. Nothing quite new there. Do the most important stuff. That's what sprints are supposed to be about. Okay? Words from the Lord. Well, Lord Kelvin. Okay. Pretty good scientist, though. Chairman of the Royal Society. I read these when I was 25 years old. And it changed my life because I was a programmer at the time. And what is he saying? He said, if something is really important, you better put a number on it. I'm a scientist, and that's what scientists do. Even if the number has never been invented, how you do it, you invent a number so you can do it. You don't say, there is no such concept, therefore we're not going to do it. You say, we are going to measure the weight of the rings of Saturn, and they're a long way away, and it's very difficult, but we are going to do it. And they do it. Even if they send a space probe out there, take little pictures and estimate the materials and then estimate the weight and crazy things like that. It's amazing what scientists do of quantification and measurement to do science. Science is finding more knowledge. Engineering is building good systems with that knowledge. What's he say here? If you can quantify, express an idea with numbers, and measure, different idea. Volt, voltmeter. Speed, speedometer. Two different ideas. Don't confuse them. It's amazing how many people confuse the ideas. I call that lack of intellectual clarity. You shouldn't get out of a university if you don't know the difference between a quantification and a measuring tool. That's crazy. But people do. They get out of university and they don't know the difference. I say quantify, they start thinking about the difficulties of measuring, proving they do not understand the difference and should never have graduated with their software engineering degree. But they do. If you can do that, maybe you know something about the subject. But if you cannot quantify and measure, then look in the mirror. I am stupid. I cannot manage software systems. I'd better learn more. Just say that to yourself every morning in the mirror. You don't have to let anybody else know how stupid you are. Just hide it. But do something about it. Look like on the internet where you find all the answers. Decide to become more competent in being numeric. Because numeric is clear. Numeric is feedback. Numeric is the key to really good Agile, as I shall show. Agile that never fails. The key is the numbers. You want to never fail Agile? You need to go numbers. I'll prove it. You want to have 61% failure? Don't do the numbers. Just do Scrum. Okay, maybe only 19% with Scrum. Who knows? It's still far too much. One failure is one failure too much. Okay. Thank you, Lord, for your wisdom. That was the end of the sermon for today. Okay. Now, here's a big map of, in fact, some real systems we planned. And don't worry about the detail, but these are all the stakeholders, quite similar to what I showed you before. These are all the ilities and qualities and values. These are all up there. And then these are all of the designs for achieving the values. If you like, we would call this architecture. We would call these requirements. And here is the source of requirements, the stakeholders. If you like, a global map of our planning work before we start coding. You have to have the stakeholders before. Let's see if this works. You have to have the stakeholders before you understand what requirements they have. You have to have the requirements before you logically can do the architecture. And you have to have the architecture before you know what to build and what it will cost. That's called design logic. I have a paper called The Logic of Design. Go to the internet and get it. You've got to understand this logic. Stakeholders, requirements, architecture, build, costing, and build in that sequence. You can't skip over. You can't go straight to the coding. You can, but you will get 61% total failure. That's not lean. Lean is you think before you leap. Coding, straight away, we don't need requirements and design. It will emerge. That's Agile, as taught today, right? It's not true. Yeah, they will emerge. Too late. But nobody talks about that. It will cause failure because it's too late. Is that clear? So, lean. Tackle your demons and problems early. Find out who your stakeholders are. First day of the project, not months after you've delivered, just before you crash. Before Facebook has to answer to the world for, 57 or 87 million stolen identities. See? So Zuckerberg is facing his stakeholders now, very publicly, and apologizing. You want to be in that position? Global infamy. Global infamy. You can do that if you're a programmer at Facebook. He's not very proud of himself now, but he got really caught. So here's a slightly enlarged list, again, just to give you some idea with the text here of the type of thing we call values and qualities. And what I'm saying is, and what Lord Kelvin is saying, all of these can be quantified. We can put a number on all of them. They are not soft. They are not only to be spoken about with words like extremely high user friendliness. That's poetry. Extremely good security. Let me give you a simple alternative to extremely good security. It's just an example. It's not everything. What if I said instead, I want to capture or detect 95% of all hackers within 10 seconds. And that's what I call extremely high security. Okay, simple, it's narrow, but you see I can quantify in a few words too. And I can get very clear about what I'm doing. 95% of the hackers in 10 seconds. Can you plan a test to do that? If you cannot, you're no sort of test planner. It's obvious. I mean, you need at least 100 hackers, very roughly. You need a stopwatch that can count to 10. And you need to be able to say when they're detected. What's the big deal? It's a testable idea. That's because it's a clear idea. Extremely high security is not a testable idea. It's not a clear idea. We talk a lot about people should work in teams and teamwork and cooperate and make decisions together. If you have extremely high security for the team, they cannot work together. They can sit in a room and smile and say, I believe in high security, and somebody else, I believe in high security, but they're talking about two different high securities, and they don't even know it. So now they will begin to fight each other over things like the architecture for their vision of very high security. If you want people to work together, good teamwork, they must have clear and ambiguous common purpose. In other words, quantified requirements. And people hold speeches even at conferences like this and mumble words, team and decision making, but they don't ever address this issue that people don't even understand one another on the team. But then they have nice teamwork and cup of tea, Turkish coffee hopefully, okay? But they're not really agreeing on anything, and they're not really moving forward towards 95% detection of hackers within 10 seconds. They're just moving, each individual has their own opinion and is different from all others. Only when you quantify and clarify do you get one vision for the whole team, also shared by the management and your sponsors. That's the beginning of real teamwork and real cooperation and real communication. And most of you, I suspect, like the rest of the world, Turkey is no particularly bad example, do not communicate very well about requirements, quality requirements in particular. Or let's put it another way. How many people here say, Tom, our company always quantifies all quality requirements? If I get lucky, a hand goes up. We're noting no hands are going up. Right. So I guess, now I could say how many people can put up their hands, but I did that before. Okay? So that means you're not even communicating about, put it another way. You know what projects are all about? They're not about writing code, that's for sure. All projects are about improving values. Many of those values are qualities. Some are not. They're like saving money. Give a different example. But all projects, if you ask why are we spending money on it, the answer from the people sponsoring project is to improve this quality, that value, reduce this cost. Not to write code, not to write user stories. To improve the values is the reason people do all projects, the only reason. There's no other reason. You ever think about that? It took me a while to arrive at that incredible conclusion. All projects are always about improvement of a set of values. These values must always be quantified in the requirements, or you do not have a clear basis for doing the project and communicating with anybody. So here, then, is an example in the planning language. Most people learn to do this in one day. Some of you, if you had the slides, are smart enough to just do it by copying the basic ideas and templates. It's pretty simple. But the basic idea is we have a name like national security. We realize that's part of our stakeholder values. We have the bullshit level. This is the one the managers who go to business school write. Sounds good. Everybody nods, and nobody knows what they're talking about. Total chaos. But we are very polite to the managers. We don't say, you're a stupid bullshitter and your education is crap. By the way, crap is an acronym for common replies and phrases, in case you thought it was something else. We say, thank you for your guidance and direction, O Lord and Master. But we're techies. So I guess we are offering to help you clarify this great idea of yours about security so that it gets done effectively, quickly, and cheaply. Would you like some help from some experts in high tech? That's you, the experts in high tech. Now, a manager who says no to that is pretty stupid. You have to find yourself another job. Intelligent manager said, well, that sounds very interesting. Yes, I would like my ideas to be understood. You're telling me you can help me. How do you do that? Well, you go away for a while and you invent a scale of measure. You find a number for how bad you are today. You find a number for how much better you want to get tomorrow. You analyze a little bit what the state of the art of the world record is and realize you are planning to be 10 times worse than is possible. And you go back to the manager, because they should be able to read this stuff and say, Would you like to approve it or change it? If you approve it, this is what we're going to deliver. This is what we'll put in a contract. This is what people will get paid for. If you don't approve it, fine. We shouldn't start building it yet. It's a bit too early. Okay? What would you like to change? Would you like to change the ambition level to go for 10? Would you like to change the date from next year to next month? Would you like to change the scale of measure to define security a little bit differently? What would you like to change to guide us with your wisdom, O Lord and Master? Very polite, very diplomatic. Don't tell them that I think they are poorly educated. They can't help it. It's their stupid professors who did it to them. And the stupid professors can't help it because their stupid professors did it to them. There's a whole book on this called The Puritan Gift by Hopper. How the American management MBA destroyed American power and culture, and Trump is busy trying to get it back from the Chinese. I just made that last part up, but it sounds good given today's news. Okay? So this is an example of quantification of national security. And you can do the same pattern. What is the scale? And how good do you want to be are the essential questions. The scale parameter and the wish parameter. Those are the things that make a requirement clear, unambiguous, testable, contractable, powerful, and likely to be delivered. Just out of curiosity, see if I'm winning or losing here. How many people say, well, we never did it that way before, but I could imagine trying. We should try. How many people said we think we should try? Well, okay, a little bit of winning here. You know, it's not going to kill you to try. You can do it at home, secretly. Don't tell anybody. And then you can share it with a friend and say, what do you think? Shall we go to the boss with this? You know, you'd be surprised. Bosses, good bosses, love this. Bad bosses just shake their heads. Find yourself another job. There can't be all bad bosses in Turkey. Find good bosses who appreciate the idea of clearly articulating the essentials. But good managers love this stuff. Maybe you can guess why. It empowers them to actually take their responsibility for making things happen. But it delegates power to you to help them make it happen. That's also fun. I showed you a little bit of this earlier, the impact estimation table. Maybe you remember roughly what we're talking about. We'll get there in a moment. I like this saying of Confucius, which some people think Weinberger, Secretary of Defense, said, but he didn't credit Confucius, knowing the known unknowns in that quotation. Confucius said, true wisdom is knowing what you don't know. Not knowing a lot, knowing what you don't. It's the stuff you don't know that is the high risk that will kill your project, by the way. We're talking risk management here. Stuff you don't know. Now, take a look at that table. When the table starts out, we don't have any numbers or ratings here. It's got question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. It means nobody has tried to estimate how good the architecture is for delivering security. In other words, it's a known unknown. I'm teaching you a very simple tool for knowing what you don't know. What if the whole table is filled out except one square, one cell? Going between some design and security. And nobody has made an estimate. Is that dangerous? It's enough to kill your project. You see, the answer could be it's minus 10,000% and totally destructive. Could be anything. Nobody knows, right? If you don't know, it could be a very bad answer. It could be project destroying. So you can't just mostly know most of the stuff. You actually have to know all of the stuff, or take a chance. Are you feeling lucky today, punk? That's Clint Eastwood, in case you didn't get my imitation. You know? It's amazing how people have no knowledge whatsoever about how their architecture or design will impact security and cost. And they go and spend 40 million pounds building a system at a bank. It's amazing that managers who call themselves managers would allow themselves to do it. Masses of unknowns, lots of money, and the project fails. And we say, yeah, because it's complex. We find some excuse, or the supplier Accenture screwed up. Let's try again. Okay? The reality is they never tried to reason and think about problems early. That's called lean. Lean, early. Good engineers and designers have always spent a lot of time early before they committed lots of money and people and time and risk. And that's what sprints are. That little experiment to find out a little bit more information about how it really works. Agile can help you gather some of that information when it is unknown. You don't have to know everything before you start. That would be Big Bang Waterfall. But you have to know what you don't know and say, let's plug that in next sprint and see what happens and measure it. Then you know. If it turns out good, keep on trucking. If it turns out really bad, stop. Think. There was a nice little think sign from courtesy of IBM. It's a very good idea. Called critical thinking. This is critical thinking in practice. It means every relationship, you should try to know something about it before you take a big chance on your career and a big failed project. Here's just the table. Again, any spreadsheet can convert a table like that into bar charts like this, but it's a simple presentation. It says, managers, this strategy called incentivize has all this value and only this cost. This strategy has all of this value and this cost. And this one has practically no value, but it'll cost you an arm and a leg. Which one do you want to start with? Okay? And you would think that people would like to start with the highest value for money. That should be the prioritization, the sequencing of the sprints. But they don't. You know why? They don't evaluate the value or the cost. Therefore, they cannot sequence. Therefore, a product owner tells the coders what to do. I don't know how they do it. I've always thought it was kind of a silly, childish culture. I think we need to have a little bit more logic, reasoning, and decisions at company level, what we want, and estimates of what it'll cost before we tell the sprint team what to do. I think we need to automate the product owner. And this is how to do it. Third element here, we call it EVO. That's short for evolutionary. Okay, now if you look carefully in the dictionary, and even a lot of IT things, for example, there were evolutionary standards at U.S. Department of Defense, which were early Agile. And we're talking 1990s, long before the Agile Manifesto. Evolutionary is different from iterative and incremental. See, iterative is just tick, tock, very boring. 1, 0, 1, 0. Right? Incremental is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No matter what happens and how badly it goes. 7, just keep on going if it's going badly. Huh? Evo says, well, try step 1. Okay, went well. Try step or sprint 2. Screwed up. Let's sit and think about that. Maybe we should go to step 23 or invent a new step 99. Okay? So Evo uses feedback and learning to figure out what's right and what's wrong before you progress your sprints. It's a form of control, of process control, of management control. But you have to measure what you got compared to what you estimated you'd get to see if there is a problem. If you haven't estimated anything and you don't measure anything, the function is there, the code works, not too many bugs. Okay, keep on writing the next 40,000 user stories. Okay? There is no reaction to the fact that you're building as a Facebook system which is going to share private data and change world power in elections. From Brexit to American election to God knows what. Hey, there's an idea for fixing the next election in Turkey. Let's see, which party do we want to win? Whoever will fund us the most. with stealing Facebook data about Turks. We'll fix it. Just ask these guys, Cambridge Analytics, they'll fix it. You saw the interview, right? No problem. So here's this Evo cycle. I've been through it once. I'll do it again. Stakeholders, right? Then the values, meaning quantified qualities, values, and costs. Requirements. Next step, solutions. So those are the solutions across the top, but this is the evaluation of the solutions, values expected, costs expected, value to cost, do we really want to do it? Which one should we do first? Right? I had a keynote at the 2013, I think it was, London Software Architecture Conference. You can Google that and find the video. And I studied enough software architects and enterprise architects to know that they never did anything like this. They never quantified their architecture in any dimension, like any value, any quality, or any cost. Not part of the culture in TOGAF and Zachman and all these other enterprise architects things. So just for fun, I asked the easy question. When you, the architect, are planning maybe some security stuff and you lay on the table a very expensive architecture, let's say 10 million pounds worth. Okay. How many of you actually estimate that it will cost about 10 million pounds? Out of 300 people, presumably all enterprise architects, exactly 3 people suggested that they estimated costs. So I can safely state that only 1% of architects estimates the cost consequences of what they do. Now that should be illegal. You shouldn't be able to be an architect if you can't estimate the cost of what you're suggesting. Real architects actually get into costs. Okay, it's called quantity surveying, if you'd like a name on it. Okay, but software architects don't, because it's soft. But then I asked the question I really wanted to ask: how many of you estimate the value you're going to deliver with your architect, the degree of security? And out of 300 architects, 1 of them raised his hand. I then checked, as you know, how many people can raise their hand, and it turned out everybody could. Huh? So I can safely state that 0.33% of all software architects in Europe estimate the value of their architecture, for example, in security. The rest of them just throw it on the table. Yeah, we'll have some encryption and the password, and we're all done because that's security, isn't it? That's irresponsible, that's childish, that's dangerous, and that's how those projects fail. Right there. Total architecture fail. Even if they had good, clear requirements, they have no obligation to do a good job on the architecture because they're not architecture, they're architectural poets. They throw in nice-sounding words. They don't even ask for clear requirements because they don't know what they are. They're not trained to do it. They're not stupid people. They're very interesting people. But they're not trained in their enterprise architecture discipline to do the engineering that most real architects for buildings actually do. Architects of buildings are not artists primarily. They're just high-level systems engineers looking at the whole system called the building, but they're engineers. Okay? Checking the time. The next thing is you have your big solutions, sometimes called architecture. That's these. And we decompose. Why do we decompose? Because this would take a year. And this will take 2 weeks. And this is a sprint, and this is too big to be a sprint. So in very simple terms, we have to decompose big ideas into small sprints. Why? Because we need to do some of them early, because we need to make sure they work, and if they don't work, we need to change them. And we don't want to do all 12 of the subsidiary ideas just to find out that nothing works. Okay? This is good Agile. Decomposition is a prerequisite for serious Agile. Systematic decomposition. This is decomposition of a strategy, is what managers call it. Enterprise architecture, that's what IT people call it. A design, other people might call it that. Okay, you need to decompose. We also, when I train people, I say, this was training in Warsaw, Poland, by the way, in October, planning actually, if I've got it right, export from Poland. 60 people, one team, 2 days. Okay? And I say, when you decompose it so every little decomposition can be implemented, set it in a sprint, independently of whether the other ones are implemented or not. Why? Because then I can do any one of them first if it has high value. Also, when you decompose, make sure that any one of them will, hopefully, deliver some value rather than no value. Sitting and having a meeting generally delivers no value. Integrating it with the client's system so they can use it the next day potentially has value. And some people don't know the difference between a task and a value delivery step. And that sort of shocks everybody, but they learn within half a day that that's an interesting way of decomposing for Agile. Develop. Well, that's sort of you're in the kitchen mixing things and cooking things and stuff like that. Think of it as coding if you must. Okay. Maybe small subsets of the architecture that take only a week or two. Sprints. Okay. And then when it's developed, then we have to integrate it into the real customer system, the real hospital, with the real nurses. And see if the nurses can lower the probability of delivering poison by accident to a patient so they die. It's a well-known problem. A wonderful book I just read by Syed, S-Y-E-D, is called Black Box Thinking. I was highly recommended, but it goes into great depth about the dangers of going to a hospital where the culture is they don't really want to learn, even if the patient dies. Fascinating. There's a doctor, friend of mine, family member said to me once, if you want to avoid getting sick or dying, don't go to a hospital. They have a really bad... He compares the culture to like aircraft investigation, really determined to find the root cause and change things so the next aircraft doesn't die from the same reason. But the medical profession, hospitals, is completely opposite, interestingly enough. So what is your culture with learning? How good is that? When your projects fail, do you cover up? Or do you have an inquiry, an investigation as to why the Agile project died, find the root causes, change your practices, and your success rate goes from 61 failure down to 0? How many of you do anything like that? You are learning and measuring that you're getting better in your company processes. Systematic process. Good. Hopefully, mature organization. Hopefully. Standing around in a meeting talking about it is a nice little thing to do, but it isn't very good analysis and change of an organization. Okay? So I'm not a big fan of stand-up meetings or retrospectives, so they're just not done properly. Put it mildly. I've got stuff that does work much better. I'll give you a name, defect prevention process. Look it up. Invented by IBM 1990. Okay? I've written a lot about it in various books. DPP, defect prevention. That's a really effective software process of change and analysis. And we have numbers to prove it from nice companies like IBM. Okay? This stuff in Agile, I just smile and laugh and say, they don't know their history. They don't know what works so well. They are doomed to repeat errors and errors and errors and failures until they learn things we knew decades ago work much better. So, we deliver the pie to the customers in the restaurant. And then we are capable of measuring. How does it work? And then from the measure, which we thought we'd save a day, but we only saved 10 minutes. That's a big disappointment, right? Now you need to say, what's wrong with this architecture? Why isn't it as good as everybody said it would be? You know? And you don't spend time justifying and explaining. You throw it away and you get yourself a better architecture that does save an hour. I'm going to go into more detail about that in a moment. Okay, just get rid of it fast. Fail fast was one of the slides here earlier, right? Fail fast. Don't agonize. Just get rid of the stuff that isn't working and try to find something that does work. This whole thing, this cycle, some people might call it a sprint, but I wouldn't. See, your sprints as we know them are nicely hidden here. What we've got on either side of it, we've added value management. Okay, so we state quantitative requirements and we estimate and we measure and we do other things. This is not what Scrum does. It's not what conventional Agile does. We have a new type of sprint. Let's call it a learning sprint. A fail fast, learn fast, learning sprint. An engineering sprint. Call it what you like, but it's not the old style sprint. But it is a cycle. I just recently thought the word micro-project captured it very nicely. Just having a bit of fun with words. Okay, it might only take a week, but you have succeeded, hopefully, normally, in delivering real value to real customer that week. Measure it. They know it, you can prove it, your boss knows it. Every week. Wouldn't that be nice? Every week by Friday, you know that you have delivered value and you can prove it, and take the weekend with your family and have a nice time with a good conscience. That's how life should be. And one of the main ideas of Agile was not to work yourself to death. Here's one way of doing it. Really deliver sexy, strong value every week and take the weekend off with a good conscience. You can deliver code and say, we did it, but you have no proof that it is actually delivering any value. So you're worrying. Maybe it won't work. Maybe they'll find out we don't know what we're doing or talking about. Okay. Oh, I think I'll work all weekend just to make sure it doesn't have too many bugs. That's the value management process. So here, I showed you this earlier. That's the business analyst part. That's the architecture engineering. Here, more EVO, project management, Scrum. And here is sort of reality check, measurement of reality and decisions what to do about bad realities and maybe good realities. Little comment on DevOps anyway. Let's see. Okay. So I'd like you to meet an old friend of mine. That is, I was friends with him in the 70s, 80s, 90s, but then he went and died like old friends do. So he's no longer, you will not meet him at a conference. But I managed to talk him into coming to a conference in Oslo once, but probably never been here. I call him the Leonardo da Vinci of software engineering. In other words, the smartest, most ingenious fellow around. And IBM knew that. And IBM had a big problem just about the time they landed men on the moon and got them back to Earth safely. And that was that every time people bid on a software project, the lowest bidder won the contract. The law in the United States. Don't fool with it. And the lowest bidder, if it was IBM, said, we always lose money on the contract. That it always costs more than we bid, there is no profit. And IBM was saying, what's the point of being in that business? We're not here to give away stuff at our expense. We're here to make money. We're a business, international business. Well, machines. Okay? So they said, we either have to figure out how to win bids and earn profit, or we have to get out of the business. This is still a problem today, right? People are bidding on contracts and lowest bidder is winning for outside contracting. Now, there are ways of fixing this problem. It's called cheating. The moment the customer makes a single change, you charge them $1 million extra. But you just charge them. And some are so dumb that they actually pay outrageously high charges for changes, and that's how they compensate for the fact that they really bid too low. But that's cheating. Okay? So IBM said, we are an ethical company and we're not going to cheat like our competitors do to earn money. We're either going to earn money honestly or we'll get out of the business. I have respect for that. So they went to Harlan Mills and said, Harlan, You're the smartest guy in town. We give you a job, fix this. Fix it so when we win the lowest bidder, we earn a profit. Are you so smart as a technologist you could solve that problem? I'm not sure I am. But I know Harlan was, because he's got a track record that is published. Okay? Let's take a look at what Harlan says. It's all published. I've got links for those who want to go in depth down at the bottom of that slide. A lot of text here, but let me just simplify this. Qualities like security are not coded in, they're not tested in, they're designed in. Or they're engineered in, if I can say it more directly. Okay, now, a lot of people know that, but our coders and testers don't. They really think, I'm the quality assurance manager. What do you do? I assure quality. What do you do? I test. What do? You find bugs and they fix them. They actually think that quality is finding and fixing bugs. It is not. It does not give you security or usability, to take a simple example. It gives you fewer bugs. Whatever that is. Don't we know our technology any better than that? We really think that somebody who finds and fixes bug is quality assurance director? That's crazy. That's insane. That's as bad as calling a program coder a software engineer. Because they're not an engineer. They can code. They're just a soft crafter. You heard me. Soft crafter. You know, like plumber, electrician, stonemason, coder. Next one, summary of 10 years of experience, summary of, what does it say here, 7,000 person years of software development. So this is no small student experiment. Many projects at IBM Federal Systems Division. Read the bottom line there. There were few projects that were late over the deadline or overrun, meaning over the financial budget, over the cost. In 10 years, few, and none at all in the past 4 years. Can't read that? I'll help. That's called perfect project management. You're now steering real, well-documented, independently of me and what I think and what I do. This is IBM. Perfect software project management of the most difficult projects in the world. Isn't that worth knowing? I mean, we wouldn't want to delete that knowledge now that you've got it. Okay? You have to learn from history or you're doomed to fail and fail and fail until you figure this out. Maybe you don't have a Harlan Mills genius to help you or coach you. Maybe you actually have to learn from the one guy who cracked it. He's taken the trouble to write it up in IBM Systems Journal, publish it, make it available to you. Perfect project management for software, done in the 1970s. And I published that in my book in 1988, Principles of Software Engineering Management. And some guys like Kent Beck and Jeff Sutherland and Jim Highsmith, those are the signers of the Agile Manifesto. They say they read that book and thought, this is a really good idea. Tom calls it Evo, but just to be different, we'll call it Agile. Where do you think they got their ideas from? Notice it says 45 incremental deliveries. It's not Big Bang Waterfall, which was all the rage, the military standard at that time. They are deviating from the culture. They're going agile before the word was invented. But we did call it incremental. We called it evolutionary. We did not use the word agile. Doesn't matter. It's essentially the same thing. 45 steps. So every step is the opportunity to learn. Opportunity to check the quality levels and learn whether the architecture is working. So I've got my last 5 minutes, so I better hurry up. Okay, but we go on. Mills says the magic trick for perfect project management is called design to cost. Can you see the words in the middle of that? Yeah? Design to cost. That's a well-known engineering paradigm. Look it up and Google it. It means a smart designer can design something to be cheap and implement it in the short time. And a not-so-smart designer will design something expensive that'll take you 100 years and fail. Okay? There's a simple difference, but it's well known that some designers are just smarter than others, and they can determine the cost and the time and the qualities by design, by finding a good idea that works well. Oh, this is the thing that the Agile guys threw out with the bathwater. This is my 5-minute warning. Okay. That's silly. If you want to get control of cost and time, you have to have a design process, and it has to work at every sprint interval. And that's what they do. So let me introduce Robert Quinnen. The book on the side is my book where I published this, 1988. So you didn't have to learn it from Harlan Mills. You could have learned it from me if you bought my book in 1988, as the Agile Manifesto signers did. The problem with the Agile Manifesto signers, they are my good friends, and they're very smart, nice people. I love them all. They've all been home, had pizza at our summer cabin in Oslo. Right, Solveig? Yeah. They managed to pick up one of my ideas in that book, and that's it. You should not have Big Bang waterfall. You should do small cycles. But you know what they forgot? They forgot everything I said about quality and value and cost. Why? Because they were immature. They were young. They were coders. And they just thought, if I code in smaller increments, that's a good idea. Let's do it. Let's call it Agile. So the Agile Manifesto is a very immature concoction by young coders with the intent to change the world and make it better. Wonderful. But they just forgot one thing: control over values and costs. After all, these are emergent, whatever that means. Will magically take care of themselves, won't they? No, 61% total failure. Obviously not. You do it this way, 0 failure. I hope you'll all adopt one idea. We should be working towards 0 failure of our projects. I'm telling you how to do it in practice. My clients do this too and have masses of reports from Hewlett-Packard, Intel, Boeing, and many others. It's in the value planning book. All the case studies. Happens to all of my clients too. This just happens to be quite an independent early version of it. But it's not a single instance. So here's Quinnen, but Quinnen is the architect, and I've got to make a long story short, don't know if I'm going to keep my promises and design to cost of being finished at the deadline, 6 o'clock, right? Which is 3 minutes away. I could just stop now and I would have succeeded, right? Before the deadline. And long story short, Quinnen says, my job as an architect is to evaluate how much availability we got and how much we thought we would get. And if we're not getting enough, I have to get in there and design, to architect, define something. Now. Now means lean, early, not at the end when you're being interviewed by the Senate like Zuckerberg. That's too late. Early. So they're getting in there the earliest possible sprint, learning what's working and not working, and they do not scale up bad architectural ideas because they haven't even measured and learned that they're bad. Okay, a lot of good stuff here, and I think I won't even do anything except skip to the end. If you're interested in scaling, all my methods are declared to be scale-free by Eric Simmons of Intel, who's used them for 17 years on 20,000 people. So scaling up is also a silly game Agile people are playing. Scale-free is a much smarter game. But the details are there if you want to read it. That's experience from my clients. It's not my own words, but interesting guy. And there are also scale-free principles. Okay, here's some more detail on decomposition, but we need to get to the end on time, don't we? So I was dreaming when I heard that Jürgen wasn't coming. I got the whole 2 hours, then I would have gotten through this. But somebody was late in delivery of their conference speeches, so that ate up an hour, so I didn't get it. Can you run a conference with these methods? Yes, you can. We'll talk about it, right? Why not? So main messages. We need to quantify. We need to estimate. We need to estimate qualities and costs. We need to measure the quality of what's going on. And we need to do design to cost and change things. And that's it. And those are some books. Those are some links to how to get them. If you want I had a wonderful little offer to translate the shortest 10-page version of my book to Turkish. A nice young lady who came up to me there. So you may shortly see a Turkish edition. We will publish it to the conference participants when we get the Turkish edition. Where is she? Is she in the room? There she is. That's the lady who's going to translate to Turkish. I gave her an easy one, the 10-page book. I have a 900-page book waiting, which my Russian, Ukrainian friends have already translated to Russian. Wouldn't you like to have all my stuff in Turkish? Yeah. Thank you. Good night.